Tonight we'll hear from Brianna Trigg and Erica Baker at the Pacific Education Institute, who will introduce us to the technology tools and resources that scientists recommend and educators have employed with their students during field investigations. We'll have a Q&A session following tonight's presentation. Please bear in mind that you will be muted to allow our presenters to be clearly understood by everyone attending tonight. If you have a question for me or for either of our presenters at any time during tonight's webinar, please type your questions to NEEF host in the chat box on the lower right portion of your screen. Afterwards, please stay tuned for a quick poll, after which we will be providing a link to access the new Technology for Field Investigations Guide developed by the Pacific Education Institute and Association of Fish and Wildlife Agencies, pictured on the right. Welcome. My name is Sarah Kozicki, and I am Education Program Coordinator for the National Environmental Education Foundation, or NEEF for short. NEEF is a nonprofit chartered by Congress and affiliated with EPA. We're the nation's leading organization in lifelong environmental learning, connecting people to knowledge they use to improve the quality of their lives and the health of the planet. One of NEEF's program areas is K-12 education. We reach classroom teachers, informal educators, and youth leaders with tools and resources to engage young people in environmental learning. The infographic you see pictured here is part of our Greening STEM initiative and details how the environment can engage and prepare students for careers in STEM, science, technology, engineering, and math. The environment represents a compelling context for teaching STEM as it provides a diverse range of real-world challenges that engage young people in meaningful hands-on opportunities to apply and reinforce STEM concepts across multiple subject areas. Research indicates that a majority of young people are interested in and care about the environment. You can find and download this infographic at eeweek.org. Hosted by NEEF, EE Week is the nation's largest celebration of environmental education held each year the week before Earth Day and inspires environmental learning and stewardship among K-12 students. We reach educators across the United States with resources for teaching about the environment. This year, as part of our Greening STEM initiative, the EE Week theme is Taking Technology Outdoors. We'll highlight the unique role that technology can play as a bridge to engage students in meaningful and hands-on STEM learning outdoors. Technology tools like smartphones can help young people plug into nature by empowering them to observe and document the world around them. Our top 10 apps for taking technology outdoors, pictured here, provides examples of free educational apps that educators can use to engage their students in environmental learning outdoors. This graphic and other resources are available at eeweek.org/greening_STEM. In addition to the top 10 apps, we have a series of resources available to teachers and educators who register for EE Week this year, including this series of webinars, toolkits offering tips, tricks, resources, and ideas for using the latest technology to excite students about environmental learning in their community, as well as case studies, success stories, and examples of technology in action. I encourage everyone to register for EE Week if they have not done so already and help spread the word. And now I'm going to turn it over to our first presenter tonight, Ms. Brianna Trigg with Pacific Education Institute.
All right, thank you, Sarah, and I will just find our piece. Okay, well, we are very glad to be here today with NEEF for EE Week, and at the Pacific Education Institute, one of our main focuses is Green STEM, because we think it's really the best way to engage students in real-world learning. And I'll talk a little bit more about that in a moment, but first, who are we as the presenters? My name is Brianna Trigg, and I am the program coordinator at the Pacific Education Institute. I've been working in environmental education for a number of years. I started at the Washington Department of Fish and Wildlife, and while I was there, I had the opportunity to partner with scientists, schools, and the Pacific Education Institute on citizen science projects. For the past 4 years, I've been working directly with Pacific Education Institute, or PEI, and while doing this work, both at Department of Fish and Wildlife and at PEI, I've been lucky to work with Erica Baker. Erica, can you tell us a little bit about yourself as well?
Sure. Thank you, Brianna. Yes, my name is Erica Baker. I am a former classroom teacher with experience teaching first all the way through 7th grade, either as a science teacher, a science and social studies teacher, or a language arts specialist. I have a master's degree in technology and education and have been working as an educational consultant for the last 8 years with the Pacific Education Institute, as well as other agencies, organizations, and businesses, and during which I have had wonderful opportunities and been writing curriculum, providing professional development around particular content, and really focusing on getting kids outside doing real-world science in the outdoors.
Perfect. Thank you. So during the webinar, I'm going to start out, tell you a little bit about PEI, and then the frameworks that we've developed for both formal and informal educators, and talk a little more specifically about the Technology for Field Investigations Guide, which is what we're talking about today. And then I'll turn it over to Erica, and she's going to talk about using technology with students through some real-world examples of things that are happening here in Washington, which is where we live. So first, just a little bit about who is the Pacific Education Institute. We are a nonprofit based in Washington State. Our mission statement is here on the slide. Using the environment as a context, the Pacific Education Institute provides schools and teachers with tools and support to help students become socially and scientifically literate citizens, adept at critical thinking. Our programs focus on providing professional development to teachers to ensure that they have the tools and support to get their students outdoors and engaged in that real-world research and action projects that contribute to their learning. We've also spent time over the past few years researching and developing a number of frameworks that highlight the best practices of rigorous environmental education. And you can see pictures of the covers of a lot of these. We developed these with funding from the Association of Fish and Wildlife Agencies to focus on conservation education and how we can provide best practices for getting students outdoors. The two top ones are our project-based learning model and our field investigation guides, which are there on the left. And the project-based learning model really talks about engineering design and how you do action projects in the outdoors. And our field investigation guide, you'll hear a lot about today, because field investigations, this is really how you do field science methodologies in the outdoors. And so this foundational piece really ties into the field investigation, or the technology pieces that we're talking about today. And you'll hear Erica talking a lot about kind of the field investigation process as she describes technological tools. We have a couple other landscape investigation guidelines which talk about how to do social studies in the outdoors. We have a guide called Fostering Outdoor Observation Skills that talks about how you teach younger students how to observe in the outdoors. Our Schoolyard Biodiversity Investigation Guide, which really takes field investigations and applies them to biodiversity on the school campus. And then Sustainable Tomorrow, which focuses on systems thinking tied in with environmental education curriculum. So today I want to talk about technology for field investigations, and this actually just came out, the final version last week, so you're getting a new piece here. And as we started thinking about creating a technology guide, the first place we went was to the scientists and natural resource managers and the fish and wildlife agencies across the country. And so in 2011, we conducted a survey of 641 Fish and Wildlife Agency staff from 23 different states. So I'm going to just talk a little bit about some of our findings. When we asked them what technology they use in the field, the two most common were GPS units and digital cameras, which we were excited about because those are relatively accessible technology for students, and you can almost put both of those together in a smartphone today. So they really are using these kind of simple things to access field investigations in the outdoors. Another interesting finding was we asked them what do they do to prepare for going out in the field, and 60% of agency staff use Google Earth or other mapping websites to kind of get a spatial understanding of where it is they're going and what they're kind of walking into. And that was something we did not know before we did the survey. And then we asked the biologists, if you were to give students one technology tool to engage them in field science in the outdoors, what would it be? The answers range from hiking boots to telemetry equipment. So they definitely didn't consider technology the fanciest new iPad or things like that. But the four most common were very interesting. The first was trail camera. And the trail camera idea behind that is that students and teachers can observe wildlife without disturbing it. So you can kind of have a far-away view of something happening in the field. Another one is birding apps on smartphones, which is for species ID and bird songs. And binoculars, which is just a basic observational tool, but biologists found that to be a very important one. And finally, GPS units, which are really helpful to mark location and create maps. And I'm getting a little bit of feedback here, so if you guys don't have your phone muted, if you could mute that, that'll make it easier for everybody to hear. So I think the key thing with all of these technologies is that they are really a way for students to connect and engage with the natural world. And then finally, just to tell you a little bit about this guide that we created after talking to scientists, is that it really is a resource guide and gives you some places to start, but is definitely not something that is the end piece for all of these. So we created four main sections for it. The first is technologies used to observe the natural environment, and this gives some of our findings from our survey to talk about what are scientists really using in the outdoors. The second section talks about websites to prepare for field work. So in addition to Google Earth, what else can you do to be in the classroom or in the home to prepare for being in the outdoors? The third section is field mobile units. So this is apps and software, and these can be both for smartphones and also for PDAs. For example, we have a program called Cyber Tracker that we can use to collect citizen science data that was developed by Nature Mapping, and so that is described in detail in the guide. And then finally, we talk a little bit about geospatial literacy. So how do you use things like GPS and then tie it to GIS when you're back in the classroom? What do you do with all that information you collected once you got it? And so there are very interesting ways of using PowerPoint, using Esri software, and using Google Maps to investigate the world using GIS. Now I'm going to pass the presentation along to Erica for a little bit more of the exciting stuff, where she talks about using technology with students and what that looks like in practice.
All right. Thank you, Brianna. So she's going to pass the control on over. All right. Super. So in today's society, when people think about using technology with students, they frequently jump immediately to thinking about high-tech, quote-unquote high-tech tools. However, as we discuss technologies that can be used with students to study environments and conduct field investigations, I really want to clarify that the term technology does not always mean batteries must be included. There are a wide variety of both general and industry-specific tools and technologies out there, and we will be sharing examples of how different technologies ranging from simple handheld tools to electronic devices can be used with students of all ages. The key is that the technology being used adds value to the learning and or assists students as they learn about the world around them through observation, data collection, analysis, and even the communication of their findings. So some of the common technologies or tools include measuring devices, magnifying tools, cameras, cell phones, iPads and tablets, GPS units, probes and probeware, computer or web programs, and industry-specific tools. And those industry-specific tools or technologies are things, items used in fields such as forestry, geology, agriculture, wildlife and fisheries management, etc. And today I will be sharing the different ways these technologies have been used with students. But first I want to get a sense of your experience with using technology in the classroom. So I'm going to add a poll here, and this is the fun part about having live technology. So I will be bringing in a poll, and on the bottom right-hand side of your screen, you should see something pop up in just a moment that asks you to let us know about the different types of technologies that you use on a regular basis with students. So if you could just spend a moment, I believe you just click on your choices and then submit the poll. And again, just be thinking about, on a regular basis, more than once at a time, more than once a year. So we've got about 50% of the participants have completed the poll. Wow, and what I'm seeing, I will post the results here in just a moment, but very diverse uses, and almost every single device at least has 4 to 5 people that are attending. We have 57 attendees today, so I have one person that is still in progress. And then I'm going to close the poll in about 5 seconds. 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay, and I'm going to post our results so you can take a look at those. And oh, it's giving you 20 more seconds. You got to love technology. We have all kinds of fun with that. What I found was the most common ones you'll see in just a moment. Measuring devices, magnifying tools, and cameras are on the top of the list of what most people use in the classroom. And that's really, I will assume, a lot of because they're the most accessible. They're the easiest to use. They're the least expensive, and so you can see those results now, I believe, to get an idea. The one that's used the least would be the Probeware out of all of these that were posted today. So with that, when determining what and how technology can be used in the field, we need to reflect upon 3 main considerations. First and foremost, a child's age will influence how technology is used in the classroom. While younger and younger children are using technologies such as computers and tablets on a regular basis, we still must consider their developmental levels, prior experience and exposure, and their existing skills and abilities. Second, the access to the technology or tool can definitely affect how it's used in the classroom. For example, if you only have one cell phone or one GPS unit, you most likely won't be designing a whole class activity that requires students to use that cell phone or GPS unit. In addition, if you're borrowing equipment, the amount of time you have the tool really can influence how in-depth you choose to go when involving students with the technology. And finally, you will also need to consider your objectives. Why are you using the technology? Is it for the sake of using technology, or is it to enhance how the students collect data or what the students will be learning? While technology definitely can help teachers take learning to a deeper level, it can also really be a limiting factor that prevents students from thoroughly understanding a concept. So we need to keep those things in mind as we move forward today. I'm going to share a number of different examples that highlight how teachers are using a range of technologies to educate and engage students in learning about local environments. The first example involves children in a simple investigation they can conduct on their school site or any natural area. And when I'm referring to young children, this is the preschool, kindergarten, up through first grade. Although what's interesting is I have had teachers do this with even older students, less to teach about shapes, but more to teach students about understanding the complexities of nature. The question posed to the young children was, what shapes can we find in nature? The children were grouped and then given shape cards, real simple laminated pieces of paper with different shapes on them. and then they were given inexpensive cameras, one per team, that the teacher funded through a crowdsourcing website such as DonorsChoose.com. Their task was then to find their particular shape or shapes somewhere on the school campus. They had been previously instructed on how to take pictures, so there had been some pre-teaching, which is always a crucial component to really get the kids to understand how to utilize the technology before they actually undergo an investigation or experience. And so they'd been previously instructed. They went out, they took pictures of the shapes that they located. And by the way, this is where older grade buddies can really come in handy, as long as the buddies are letting the children, the younger children, take those pictures. Then once back in the classroom, the students learned how to use computers to create graphs related to the numbers of different shapes they found, and to upload their photos to share on a shared file on their computers. So the kids reported out on how many stars they found or how many circles, and then they were able to make a graph on the whiteboard at the front of the classroom, and then students were able to then use that data and learn simple Excel techniques on typing in numbers and inserting a graph. And it really gives them an empowered feeling when all of a sudden their numbers have shape, literally, pardon the pun. So after they've done that, they with the guidance of the teacher, each student was then able to create his or her own shape book, in which he or she named and described each shape picture in his or her book, and the activity really built student confidence and capabilities using technology. It enhanced student observation and communication skills and connected them to the flora and fauna on their school campus. As students get older, they are able to look more specifically at their school campus. And in this next example, students were given the question, what plants, native, non-native, or invasive, are growing on our school campus? The students first started with simple technology again, measuring tapes or pre-measured rope, quadrats, maps, aerial images, and grids. And the quadrat I want to define as pre-measured rope or PVC pipe that allows a designated amount of space to be studied. Since they didn't have time to look at every plant on their heavily landscaped campus, they learned the importance of random sampling. They then used maps or aerial images with grid overlays to determine the areas where they would count and document their plants. Once those areas were determined, the students learned how to use quadrats, which again, the predetermined amount, to sample a small area within their larger designated area. And part of that data recording involved using cameras. Some used tablets or iPads, or also cell phones. You would be amazed at what age kiddos have cell phones these days. And so they were able to photograph the plants they found within their designated space or quadrat. These images were used both to assist with the identification or to verify the identification, as well as to report on the types of plants the students were finding. Through the use of several different sites, and two in particular in this case, there are a wide variety of citizen science sites out there, but they use the Project NOAA site, and students can post their images to either get help in identifying the plants or to share what plants they're finding on their school campus. Some classes who've conducted similar studies have also used a site called projectbudburst.org. This is a site in which students can share whether it be the budding time or the flowering time of different plants, whether they are, and also if they're fruiting. And what's great about these types of studies is that whether they're just simply determining the types of plants on their school site or conducting a biodiversity study of native plants on their school site, the students are able to conduct an in-depth field investigation that uses web-based technology as a motivator to get out in the field, but doesn't require high-tech or expensive tools to accomplish their objectives. And the result is empowered kiddos that really feel like they now have a connection to their school campus and have a deeper understanding of types of plants as well as what they're finding habitat-wise. The last example I have today involves monitoring, but instead of plants, it focuses on wildlife. In this case, students worked in partnership with the Fish and Wildlife Department to help answer 2 questions related to a species that is currently listed as threatened. It's not yet listed as endangered. It is listed as threatened. And the questions were, 1, are there western gray squirrels in this area? And number 2, if so, what is their population and diversity? To begin this unit of study, the students were first introduced on how to use compasses. So very simple technology, but a very important technology. They learned everything from how to adjust for declination, which deals with magnetic versus true north, to how to navigate an orienteering course. They were also trained on how to use GPS units, including how to set tracks and mark waypoints. So they practiced, they were able to go out, learn those different skills. They learned on several different GPS units because the teacher had a mix, so each student had the opportunity to try tracking and using waypoints with different technologies. And then once they mastered these 2 technologies, they then created maps of their school campus. So they used the tracking tool and some of their orienteering skills, which involves being able to go north, south, never eat soggy wheat, right? North, east, south, and west. And they also learned pacing within this component so that they could create a very complex-looking map. And I know that one's a little bit hard to read, but you can see things listed such as fire hydrant, bike rack. But it gave the students an opportunity to really see how to utilize these different technologies, and then again to use a computer-based program to enter their data points and create these maps. The creation of these maps also helped the students see the advantages and disadvantages of both types of technologies. Through a comparison of the 2 different tools, the students began to really understand that, and this is a quote, where I am and what I'm trying to do really decides which one is best for the job. And so they were able to see that compasses definitely had particular advantages in some situations, and GPS units had advantages in other situations, which was very important for them to understand as they then began to head out into the field and locate transects within a natural area to set hare snare traps. And so hare snares are pretty much just what they sound like. They are constructed of a short section of a very large opening of PVC pipe, and in the center of the pipe section a walnut was glued with a glue gun, and then double-sided tape was used to line both the entrance and exit of the pipe. So we get these images in our head of people out with high-tech equipment trying to study wildlife when really you just need a little PVC and tape, which is really great for the kids to see how these types of technologies are still being used today. So the students headed out into the woods. They found very quickly that their orientation and orienteering skills were much needed, and that sometimes technology that we depend upon, such as GPS units, that technology is not as dependable, particularly in a densely forested area. Many of us have had that experience where we've been in the middle of a big box store or a grocery store or even our own house, and sometimes our phone reception doesn't even work. And the same is true for GPS units. If you're in a very densely forested area, you cannot receive the signals on some of the less expensive GPS units, the ones that most of us can afford. Therefore, they used their compasses and learned how to walk mile-long transects, which are straight lines in a particular direction, until they located the flagged snare locations that were previously placed by Fish and Wildlife personnel. And you can see 2 young ladies here that are in the process of documenting the placement of their hare snare. Once the hare snares were set, they were left for a designated period of time, and then the hare was collected and analyzed by biologists to determine if the hare samples were from eastern gray squirrels or western gray squirrels, as well as to determine the actual number of different squirrels that went through the snares. And the result is, and they of course reported that back to the students, and so the result is an investigation that really contributes to an actual study, builds the students' ownership and engagement with field science, enhances their field skills related to technology use, as well as their knowledge of local habitats and biodiversity. So these three examples demonstrate a variety of techniques and ways technology can be integrated simply into field investigations to engage students and deepen their learning. But with that in mind, I do want to share a few things that we have learned along the way. And you'll notice it says the hard way. We've worked with a number of teachers and received input from teachers ranging from kindergarten all the way up through high school about if they could go back and do it again, what would they change? And the first piece of it is to start simple. Don't try to bring in too many different technologies all at once. It's a little bit like herding cats sometimes when you're out in the field, and it can be quite a challenge if you're trying to utilize too many different technologies. Also, don't use technology just for the sake of using technology unless your purpose really is to teach the technology. And sometimes we do that. Sometimes we design a lesson where our sole purpose is for students to learn how to use that technology. So just keep in mind, again, goes back to the beginning when we talk about what are your objectives. Another key lesson, try it first. Always go out and use that GPS unit, make your own tracks, make your own map, use your cell phone to get your coordinates, because what you will find sometimes is technology doesn't always work the way we expect it to, or there are little hints and tips that until you do it yourself, even if you have a very thoroughly written guide, it may change a little bit. So it gives you a chance to have a deeper understanding before you get the kids, knee-deep out in the wilderness collecting data. In addition, and this is very important in the state of Washington, and I guess over in eastern United States lately, you guys have had some fun weather as well, but definitely plan for the weather. And I can tell you that garbage bags, leaf garbage bags, make great rain jackets. And so always have some materials on hand. Try to work with the kids. Don't let the weather limit your activities, but definitely plan and be prepared for changes in the weather or situations in which the weather may affect your investigation. Another lesson learned is to always have a backup and extra batteries. So as much as we plan on technology working, as much as we have, we've gotten Google Earth downloaded and we're ready to get all the kids on the computer and they're going to create maps showing where they went, and the internet provider cuts service for some reason, or all of the computers start to freeze up, or whatever it may be, always be prepared for the technology not to work, particularly if it is the electrical kind, and always carry extra batteries as you're venturing out into the wilderness or even into the schoolyard. And I usually stick, at least if I'm with GPS units, for example, I'll stick 2 units worth of batteries in my pocket, just so that if something is wrong, something doesn't seem to be working, even if I know I just changed the batteries, I've got some backup there. In addition, be flexible. You may find that as you're out with the kids, you have a certain way you want them to collect data. You're setting up random plots, or you've got transects within your investigations, or perhaps you're planning on the kids using the cameras to take pictures of certain things, and something new comes up, or something else catches your eye, or, oh, we didn't know the grounds crew was going to be out mowing today. Again, there's the need for a backup and need for some flexibility, whether it be you go to a different area or you tweak what it is that you'll be doing. One that I have been very guilty of in the past is not planning enough time. So be sure that you plan enough time, and not just time for the students to do the investigation using the technology, but really enough time for the students to practice with that technology first. And so giving them the opportunity to really master the skills so that once they are actually conducting the investigation, they're empowered and they feel successful. That can be a very valuable way of engaging the students versus, okay, guys, we have 10 minutes, learn how to do this. All right, you're going to go out for 20 minutes. Okay, we're going to come back and we're done. that can be very frustrating for kids, and it can really create some barriers in the future. So be sure that you do plan enough time, both for preparing and getting kids comfortable with the technology, as well as actually using the technology in the field. Another big one is don't assume anything. Don't assume that your students know that even after modeling it, how to use the equipment. Always be checking. You can see here we have a teacher who's kind of working with the student to verify that he knows how to use the probeware and knows what he's doing as far as the water quality data. Make sure that they are always checking with each other. And also make sure, don't assume, especially when you're taking kids outside, that they know their boundaries or where they can and can't go or what they're using that technology for. I guess the key there is to measure and remeasure, check and share. Always work with the kids so that if they are marking a waypoint or tracking, that they are checking that the GPS unit is continually working and that they are actually checking those data points to be sure that they've been recorded. And last but not least, keep track of your own lessons learned. So as you go through conducting activities, if you're like me, I don't remember anything unless it's stapled to my forehead. So really make thorough notes. Be sure that you use descriptive words as you explain what worked and what didn't work and what you would change the next time, so that, number one, you will be more comfortable and ready for the next year and more prepared and can give your students a more thorough and deeper opportunity to use those technologies. And so with that, I'm going to, it's hard to look as I'm presenting to not pay attention to all the wonderful questions that are popping up. And so I know that there are a few questions, and I'm going to turn it back to, let's see, I'm going to see if I can move the ball here. But we're going to turn it back to our wonderful host today, and she is going to let me know of the questions that popped up. There we go. And
great, Erica, thank you so much. So everyone, we're going to take a few minutes for Q&A here. So if you have a question for myself, Brianna, or Erica tonight, please type them into your chat box to me at NEFHost on the lower right portion of your screen. So Erica, tonight's first question comes from Jenna. She'd like to know what the typical length of time is for teaching some of these more complex lessons, meaning multi-step and addressing different skill levels or different skills. Over a quarter, a week, a day, what's the typical length of time there?
Wow, typical probably is the key word there that won't fit. It really depends on the age group of your students and what technology it is that you are teaching. If you, for example, for GPS units, typically some of the teachers I have worked with spend a number of days, just at least a day, explaining what GIS is before they even go into GPS, and then they spend probably 2 to 3 days, and I say days as far as, you know, a 30 to 45-minute class period. So I would say a week is probably a good amount of time to get the kids comfortable using some type of technology such as a GPS unit. I think some of the software takes a lot longer, but what I've seen happen, for example, if you're using something like Google Earth or ArcGIS Explorer Online, which if you guys aren't familiar with, they're both wonderful programs and enable kids to upload their data points if they collect GPS-type data. I would actually say that type of tool, before you get into a very in-depth, for example, the squirrel study, that was not their first use of the software. They had done some simple things before that. So as a long answer to your short question, the length of time really will vary, but I would recommend at least a week to get comfortable with a technology. And I know that's really hard in this day and age with the push for standards, but if you're doing it in a meaningful way where perhaps you can enhance some of the other content along the way, that can be a valuable use of your time as well.
Great, thank you. This is a question I think either Brianna or Eric could address, just a quick inquiry as to whether the field guides and all that you've discussed today link to state and or federal standards.
Well, and Brianna could probably answer this better than I can. I know that the next generation science standards are in their final stages of being released. We have some reference in our field investigation guide to the frameworks which were used to create the next generation science standards, as well as the older Washington State standards in the field investigation guide. In the technology guide, it is more of it's less of a curriculum guide, more of a description of the different types of technologies. So I don't believe that it has any connection to the standards, but our other guides do.
Yeah, and I can add a little bit of clarification to that too. The technology guide does reference the ISTE technology standards, but doesn't go into big detail. And then the landscape investigation guide uses the National Social Studies standards. So we did try hard to line up. Because the next generation science standards weren't out when we created these, it is most of them are just aligned to the framework.
Great. Thank you both. We did have another question about where the guidebooks are available, which we will address at the end of the webinar, so please stay tuned. Another question involving iPads from a couple of folks. What apps are helpful, or what do you recommend for using the iPad in outdoor science exploration, or a smaller example or more local example, for example, starting a school garden? What are the apps or tools on iPad that are available that you know of?
Well, there is a list in the technology guide of apps and things that are available for field investigation, so that will be a good starting place. And we also have a local teacher here in Washington who has a blog where he posts about how he uses iPads, and I can make sure that Sarah has that link to send out to all of the participants at the end, because he has some great examples of how they're using that.
Well, and in addition, one thing that you can do that does not necessarily involve an app is photo monitoring, and having the kids designate a particular place they're going to stand, whether it be one day a week, one day every other week, and they set up their iPad and they take a picture, and they're able to do photo monitoring from that point, from the day they plant that seed all the way through to the time it fruits and you collect whatever the item may be, whatever the fruit or vegetable may be. And so it's a great way to have kids practice the photography piece and then take that into iPads or into any kind of technology. You can even use just cameras and computers and create a mini movie showing the evolution and documenting the growth and changes that take place in that vegetable garden. That can be a fun thing to do too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thanks. And I'd like to add to that, another cool thing to do with smartphones and iPads and tablets is using QR codes, especially in something like a garden or a nature trail. They're actually fairly straightforward to set up, although you might want to get help from the tech person at your school district. But you can put QR codes throughout a garden or a nature trail and have students develop websites or blogs with more information about the native species that are there, or what kind of, garden plants have been planted. So there's a lot of different applications, and I encourage you all to visit eeweek.org to access our top 10 recommended apps for taking technology outdoors. Now another question here for you, Erica or Brianna, from Susan. Are there any field trials of non-formal environmental education programs using technology in the outdoors?
Could you repeat that question? I'm sorry, you cut out a little. Are there any
field trials of non-formal environmental education programs or outdoor education programs that use technology?
So like maybe some case studies or examples in a non-formal sense is what I'm assuming that question's asking. We work with a number of non-formal providers, and we are seeing a wide range of examples where they are utilizing technology. One of the most common ones I'm seeing is with water quality monitoring groups, and we work with a number of wonderful water quality monitoring groups, and they are doing everything from involving the kids in GPS marking where they are collecting their data, doing some photo point monitoring on particular native plants or species in that area, and also tracking water quality using everything and comparing ProbeWare to the good old-fashioned water quality monitoring with the tablets and the strips and the shake it up type technology. So if you wanted to see something more in depth, Brianna, maybe you can speak to where there might be a written up case study showing some of the more non-formal, such as nature mapping programs and that type of thing.
Yeah, I think the nature mapping website is a citizen science website that will have a lot of examples of how providers across the country are using technology. And I know of another example in terms of interpretation where we had somebody at the National Park Service was working with students to create a guided nature trail audio file for people to download on their iPhones, iPads, or smartphones. So that they can listen as they walk the trail. So those are a couple examples. I'd say naturemapping.com would be a good place to go to see some examples of technology in action in informal settings.
Thanks. And EE Week will also be featuring case studies this year for taking technology outdoors, and those will be up on eeweek.org, so check those out. And I apologize, I looking at the chat box, I realized not everyone knows what a QR code was, and that was not very fair of me to blurt that out without explaining further. And thanks to Tracy for helping explain that via chat. QR codes are just like barcodes that when you scan with a camera on your phone or tablet, link to a picture or a website with information about whatever that QR code contains, in this case, a native plant at a certain site. So information like that. Now we have another question here. Eric, I think you did a pretty good job of addressing this during your presentation, but maybe you could elaborate a little further. This question comes from Katie R. When working with students on field investigations, starting with student-generated investigative questions, how do you foster the use of technology without letting the tools drive the question? I.e., thinking that, this is so cool that we're using these cameras. So maybe you can kind of talk about that.
That's a great question, and that's something I definitely have seen where sometimes, again, it's the using technology for the sake of technology, and they lose the question in the use of technology. When working with kids and designing and thinking about investigation questions, and our field investigation guide does a great job helping kids understand first the different ways you can ask questions and then guiding them through, I think the key is to first think about what is it we know and what is it we need to know and what could we investigate, and really encourage them to think questions before they ever think of procedure or process. And sometimes we jump the gun and we want to go straight from question to process, when really there sometimes needs to be an exploratory period, developing background and getting kids comfortable with the different ways they can learn about their environment before they jump from the question to the process. So as you work with students, getting them to think about what could we investigate about our environment. For example, you can go out and do a very simple ecosystem description or a descriptive investigation where we just go out and chart what is it we see, hear, smell, and feel. What kinds of animals are we coming across? That type of thing. Then helping the kids generate questions and just encouraging that asking questions first piece, I think can really help keep kids from then saying, well, what are we going to do with the camera? Because that's a different way of thinking, and it's more of a different type of project then.
Great.
Okay.
Yes, thank you both so much. And thanks to everyone for, I see you've all been having really engaging back and forth in the chat as well. Some of our attendees tonight have some great ideas and know about some great resources. So we'll do one more question, and then we're going to close with a poll. So please stay with us, and then we will provide access to the field guide mentioned earlier tonight, as well as where this webinar will be archived. Nope, just some more comments. So I think that's it for Q&A. It looks like folks are really engaged in this topic area and have lots of great ideas. And Eric and Brianna, thank you so much for those very thoughtful answers to their questions. So I'm going to move on. One more piece of housekeeping before we close. I encourage everyone to stay tuned and keep up to date with EE Week. We will have 2 more webinars in this series coming up. Our next webinar is March 13th at the same time. We'll be taking technology outdoors with geography connections, and we'll be working with National Geographic and Esri, who many of you have pointed out have some great resources on their website. We'll be working with those 2 organizations to discuss the geography and geospatial tools, our tools for geography and geospatial outdoor activities and learning. So I'm going to open up a poll really quick here, just a couple quick questions. And really appreciate if you could just take a moment, let us know what you thought, how you feel, if you plan to participate in another webinar this spring. And then once I have your answers, I will go ahead and put up the links for the field guide. And this webinar, as with all of our webinars, will be archived and available online for later access. Give us a day or 2 to get that up. We'll have our presentation, the audio, and any materials that our presenters shared with us tonight available for you to look at. So please stay tuned and please check back with us at eeweek.org. I'm going to give you all just a few more minutes to fill out our poll.
And while people are filling out the poll, I wanted to just mention that if there is anyone who wants to access some of the other guides that we mentioned, they're all free downloadable guides. You can find them probably easiest on the PacificEducationInstitute.org website, going to the resources page, which is on the top line, and just click on resources. It'll get you there and have a list of that. And they're also available on the Association of Fish and Wildlife Agencies Conservation Education Toolkit page.
Thank you.
But
give you another
Sarah will provide the actual link here in a moment.
Yes. Okay. Just going to go ahead and start closing. A few seconds. Great. Thank you, everyone. And you can access the Technology for Field Investigations Guide at the following link. It's a PDF file, so you will need a reader for that. And the webinar will be archived at the below link. You can navigate that at eeweek.org, resources, webinars, and you will find all of the information about past and upcoming webinars there. So I'm going to leave this up for another 5 to 6 minutes to let everyone have a chance to copy it down. Again, this presentation will be archived and available at a later date. So if you found that you weren't able to get all your notes jotted down or wanted a link, we will be providing that for you online at a later date. So thank you, everyone who participated tonight. We're glad you came out, and we hope to see you again in March on our second webinar. And thank you again to our presenters, Brianna and Erica, for the wonderful information. And I hope everyone has a good night.
Yep, this is Brianna, and I just wanted to say thanks for everybody for spending an hour with us today.
And this is Erica saying goodbye. Thank you so much. And if you do have any additional needs, feel free to go to the Pacific Education Institute website. We have a variety of resources listed on our first page, and you can always access us through our contact information. Have a great night.
Thank you both. Have a great night, everyone.